Oh, scratching my head because I'm trying to think of what we should talk about. Um, Hi, everybody. How you doing today? I'm Frank Stanisci. Oops, the world just went upside down. I'm Frank Stanisci, Candid Frank Library. You'll find us airing our views here on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Also, you can follow me and subscribe to my YouTube page, Candid Frank Stanisci 1030, if you like. Joining me today is not Aaron William Freeland. It's Eduardo Harari. We got to give you a middle name, Eduardo.
Yeah, I should share Aaron with
Well,
because
Aaron's a good biblical name. I mean,
well, my Hebrew name is Solomon. So if you want Saul,
okay. Eduardo Solomon Harari. ESH. Okay, it doesn't do anything stupid with your initials, so that's good. We can use it for that reason. We don't want to. Anyway, so I guess there's if you look on the news, of course, being a Jew, you're concerned with what's going on in Israel. I'm being I don't hope I'm not being racist by saying you care or over assuming, but I know from our conversations you care. So I don't know why I'm being so defenseless or defensive.
oh no, definitely. I mean, it's not just because I'm Jewish, but it's as a human being, you actually have to be care about what's happening to other lives around the world. You know, innocent people are being affected for no reason at all. Uh,
Yes, yes, that's true. I you know I am I hope um, it's difficult um, in my position, and I feel sometimes there's a lot of pressure to be, if I can be honest with you, there's a lot of pressure for me not to criticize not what Jewish people do, but what Israel does. I find it difficult sometimes because I'm afraid that if I say something that I believe that I believe has nothing to do with playing a favorite or ignoring the history or the present pain and suffering of the Jewish people, I don't know. Sometimes, well, I'll give you an example, and you correct me if I'm wrong. Uh, Benjamin Netanyahu um, has a reputation and has been referred to as someone who doesn't believe in the two-state solution. Is that a fair statement?
the current Netanyahu doesn't believe in the state solution. The previous one, the one when he was a soldier, believed in it. I think the politics have gotten to his head.
So I'm not overstating something, and I'm not being a messenger for people who are trying to disinform. Right?
No,
It's
definitely.
a matter of, from my understanding, it's a matter of public record, and even today, the United States spokesperson John Kirby, I think maybe it wasn't him. No, I take that back. It wasn't him. But somebody mentioned that he is somebody that didn't believe in the two-state solution. I saw a post a friend of mine put up. She posted a thing that talked about the 5 times that Israel has offered to help a two-state solution happen, and it was rejected each time by different people in leadership of the Palestinian people or the Arab world. What do you think, as a person who probably follows this closer than I am? How because we can talk about what's going on now, Eduardo, and a lot of what we're going to say is dependent on where you get your information, right?
Correct. No, I mean, it's there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of viable information out there as well. I mean, the two-state solution has been offered in multiple occasions. We can go back to the time of Shimon Peres and
Even before that, in
yeah,
7,
Yeah, you know.
28, 28 or 27, something like that.
So you can go back to when Arafat, the first meetings at Camp David, and it was offered back then in the times of the President Carter. As far as back as that, you can go, and there was a two-state solution offered, rejected because it didn't include certain territories. So then those territories became part of the discussion. Israel accepted. It was ratified, and then Mr. Arafat was killed. Uh, and the new the new leadership of Al Tafa uh, has said that they want a two-state solution, but then the Palestinian diaspora went into two separate directions. One side, Hezbollah in the north, Hamas in the south, and Al Fatah in the west. So they cannot get together as a nation and say, okay, we abide by this. Hamas will never accept a two-state solution. We know that for a fact. Hezbollah and Al Fatah, maybe they do want one, but it's it's a very difficult situation because people say, okay, what do you want that solution to look like? Hamas is saying, go back to a territory before 1948. You go back to the territory back
Yeah,
to
but
19.
Hamas's charter says no Jews must remain alive, or in Israel it must be, right. So if that's, that's, again, it's what I've heard, and for those of you that think that's not true, I accept your belief that it's not true. But I just, the whole point is, I guess, is that why is a two-state solution the best solution? Basically, so Palestinian people, can have a country of their own, a place of their own, instead of you know, being a world of people who are looking for a home, something to build on. The thing of it is, I don't know if they've really been given a chance. And I'm not talking, forget Jews, forget Americans, forget England, forget Europe. If a people, we're witnessing it ourselves, how imagine at a time when we're living in a time where there's so much animosity between factions of people within countries right now. Historically speaking, this is probably the worst time for that we've seen over the past 100 years, right? Since democracy, last couple of 100 years since democracy has become a thing. So it must be difficult. If it's difficult to get people in Canada to agree, and it's difficult to get people in the US to agree, and it's difficult for people in England to agree. I'm using those examples because for those of us that are Canadian, these are the nearest things that we understand, the nearest places that we understand. How do you get Palestinians to agree on what they want?
it,
That's my issue.
it's very difficult because there is three different factions of the same people. One which is, let's say, democratic liberal, one which is a little bit more tending towards the right center in Hezbollah, and then you have the extreme right, which is Hamas. I mean, and the problem that with that is not so much that those three groups will have to get together, but then you have the factions, the extreme.
Well, who's going to have the power? Like, who do you hand the power to, and how do they hold on to that power? Since 2007, Hamas has not had an election. They got the West Bank. They got, sorry.
They got
They
Gaza.
Yeah, they became the government, but they haven't had an election since 2007. How does the world help Palestinian people? Can the world help Palestinian people in governing themselves? And everybody seems to hope. I'm calling this hope because, to me, what it sounds like to me, what the hope is, and the only thing that might work is that if the Arab states around, you know, around Gaza decide that they want to make sure there's a country that's at peace and Palestinian people can live in peace and fulfill some of their dreams, not live their nightmares. The problem is some of these places aren't exactly great democracies that they're asking to, to hold together the Palestinian people. So is a democracy what will work in Gaza, or is it? Do they need to have a hardliner? I don't know, Eduardo. See that all I'm trying to say is, and I'm not promoting a hardliner. All I'm trying to say is, within the context of the Mid East, if there's a Palestinian country, it has to be one that they all agree and believe it wants to be at peace with everyone, including Israel.
I mean, it's the problem is, and here is where the two-state solution has a falter, is the separation of the Palestinian state in two different areas within one country, because you have Israel that center in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you separate two states, make a two-state solution when there is two pieces of land with one in the middle?
Yeah, there's no connection.
Yeah. So unless, and we have talked about it with a lot of my friends and colleagues over the years, that the idea would be to surrender the southern part of Israel to the Palestinian people, and the north remains Israel. So from where Gaza is, across all the way across to to Jordan, would be uh, Palestine,
So I get it. What you're talking about, you and your
so that they have a
friends,
land that completely.
that yes, that you have one solid mass,
Yeah,
so that it's totally connected. It makes sense. You can't have. There has to be,
I
for
mean,
this to work. Um, I don't know how helpful it is, but yeah, some land has to be given back to the Palestinians.
it,
The
it's
Palestinians, there has to be some sort of, I want to call it a police force. There has to be some. I would start by. I know this sounds stupid, and I'm not that smart, but one of the things I'd want to make sure of is that country, whatever it is, whatever it looks like, I know it sounds stupid, but they should eliminate weapons, have no weapons, not be allowed to have any weapons, not have any weapons, and basically, I don't know. Do you have a UN force there to enforce it until such time, maybe 100 years, until such time Palestinian people within their own country believe they're safe enough to not worry about attacking Israel, to not complain about the land that they lost 100 years ago or 70 years ago or 50 years ago. That the land they have now, and some of it is pretty good land. It's seafront land, right?
yeah.
So it's not a bad piece of land to have. But the point is, there has to be, in my mind, and this is an oversimplification. I admit it, but I hate to tell you this, folks. What the Palestinian people need is dignity. They're right now, what Eduardo, what Israel's doing to them is investing in more hatred. Because now, if and I know it's hard to believe what Hamas is saying as far as the death toll there and who's dying. They're saying over 4,000 people have died, and half of them are children. They're creating, and I'm not blaming Israel for this, I'll I'll say something on the other side, on Israel's side. I'm not blaming Israel for this. I'm just saying, not about fault, but about reaction. they're creating a lot of future terrorists. They're creating a lot of future people who are angry, and they're creating a lot of people in the future who are going to look for vengeance. It doesn't matter how many they kill. Whatever's left, those people are going to look for vengeance because it's a natural reaction.
The problem, and here's another situation where the problem arises. Okay, we create a two states are created. Let's put it that way. What Who's going to support what? Because if you think about it, it's the same issue that we had here in Canada.
Same issue you have everywhere, Eduardo.
It- it- no, but let's look at it. At the two states in Canada that were supposed to be created, one being Quebec and the other one being Canada. And we run into the same situation here in Canada. If Quebec was to separate, how do you get to to the East Coast without going through Quebec?
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know,
I'll give you
and
more proof of
economically, Palestine is not self sufficient to support itself. Who is
well,
going to support them while they get into shape? Let's say into shape, financial shape to maintain themselves, because it's a big problem. I mean, Israel has done a great labor over the last 60 years to build what is there from a desert.
agreed. And in as far proof of what I'm saying is the fact how hard it is to bring a people together and how split people are. I'm one of the people that falls on the side that Israel people talk about how Israel was not prepared for this, how their security was down and yada yada and all that stuff. What I believe is, and this is the danger in the world today with when countries are divided, they're too busy arguing with each other and not seeing what's going on or being ready for something that might happen outside of their world. America, for example, can't took 4 weeks to 3 or 4 weeks to vote a Speaker of the House. The second in line after the president. We have our issues here in Canada. And in Israel, because of the Supreme Court thing that Bibi wanted to do, there was a lot of there were a lot of people who disowned the government. A lot of people, high-ranking, officers. A lot of people were upset and protesting what Netanyahu was doing. Right? I'm not making that up, am I?
No, no, no. You're
And
that's
and I believe I'm not sitting here saying Hamas deserves no blame. Sure, they did what they did, but there's also accountability here for the fact that Israel was divided and not paying attention to the degree that they would have if they were at peace with each other and not arguing and not having the left hand yelling at the right hand when both hands have to be ready to go to protect the country. And that's my beef with the prime minister of Israel, and why those kinds of leaders tick me off, because they, to get power, they divide people. But while they're dividing people, they're making everyone susceptible to bad things happening because they're not pulling the same rope together. While they're arguing, and this to me, I'll stand behind this till the cows come home. When we don't stand together, our enemies see an opportunity. And that's how I see the definition of what happened in Israel. I am in no way saying what happened to Israel they deserved. No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is they may have been part of the problem that created the circumstance that it could happen because of their divided nature. And it's time for us as people to realize we need to find not how we disagree, but how we can agree for the sake of our overall community here in Canada, in the US, in every other country in the world. This division gives opportunity to people who have terrible ideas, who are mean spirited and are out to do harm to our country. And believe me when I say this, folks, there's no country that doesn't have an enemy.
no, that's for sure. No, and you are exactly right. In Israel was caught caught with their, let's put it,
Pants down.
hands down.
Well, that's because they were pantsing each other. That's the problem. Sorry, I don't even make humor about it, but that's my point.
Because of uh, power struggle
Hmm.
by the prime minister, and you are correct. Bibi was wrong in trying to follow the footsteps of another gentleman here in the U.S. that was doing the same thing, uh, for because he didn't want persecution politically, and
Well,
that's
he didn't want to be found guilty. He wanted to change the law so that what he did was legal.
correct. And it put the country in a very bad predicament. It
I hope the Israelis see that and learn from this lesson.
Oh, believe me.
I hope the Israelis learn from this lesson because I firmly believe that he's a horrible leader that should not lead a country at any time ever. He should, whether he goes to jail or not should be based on the law. I'm not deciding that Netanyahu should go to jail, but what I am saying, if the law says he should go to jail, then put the guy in jail because he is someone who created an environment where some very mean and angry and despicable people saw an opening.
No, and you are absolutely right, Frank. I mean, let's put it this way.
And the despicable people I'm referring to are not Palestinians. They're
No,
the just like we look at our own countries. You know, there are people in our countries that are looking to make trouble. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to point. That's all they want. They want to make trouble and they want to make things bad for people because for some they see an opportunity to profit, whatever that means, or to gain power. And they don't care about what the place looks like that they gain power of. You know what I mean? Like they don't care. As long as we're running it, we don't care if we kill half of it, destroy half of it, as long as we're in power.
and it's funny because when you talk about the struggle, and the struggle in the Middle East always has been about non-cooperation. Finally, the Middle East was coming into a peace mode because you saw the beginnings of a large conglomerate of Arab nations that were aligning with Israel economically, uh, and some way politically, because I mean, the United Arab Emirates were never on the side of Israel ever, and now we have economical transactions between the two countries, flights going from Israel to the UAE. Saudi Arabia also, the kingdom of Saudi Arabia also started seeing the picture that it's better to be aligned with with Israel than for the progress of the region. Qatar did the same thing. Kuwait did the same thing. Years after Jordan and Egypt started the process. And let me go back to the 70s when a gentleman by the name of Anwar Sadat started the process. A gentleman that
He
had a great
paid with his life for that.
a gentleman that had a great vision, in not making Israel an enemy, but making Israel a partner in the region.
Yeah, they don't have to be friends. They don't have to agree. They don't have to have the same religion. They have nice high fences and borders. They keep their people in their country, and you Israelis stay in your own country. You know what they say about a fence? It makes a very good neighbor. And I mean, I don't mean necessarily a physical fence. I also, anyway. Um, the thing of it is that there are people like Anwar Sadat was a hero of his time. I think we can agree about that. Is that he wanted to do something that meant instead of having war, having peace. And he was willing to talk about what that peace looks like, which essentially, if I can bring it back to the topic that we had, everyone's talking about, a lot of people are aware. They're saying, okay, what Israel does right now and what happens after they're done? You know, what's the next step? What happens after if that ever happens, that Israel is satisfied that they've punished and or destroyed Hamas to the degree that they feel they cannot rise up again and do anything like this, which no one should argue about. Nobody, I don't think, I don't think anybody of any kind of conscience is saying that Israel has no right to do what they're doing. The question only is, how far do they go? How long does it take? How many people die? How many innocent people? Because remember, this is the thing that bothers me, is that the innocent people that died in Israel were innocent. These weren't people that were doing anything against Hamas directly anyway. But the same way that the Palestinians who are dying because of Israel's attack on them, they too didn't do anything to deserve it. At least not everyone, right? And this is why we have a split in the world today. There are a lot of people that are casting sympathy towards the Palestinians, not Hamas, the Palestinians, because people are dying, children are dying. Do we know how many? Many suggest that you can't really trust what is it, the Hamas health department, I guess, that says how many are dying. But there are people on the ground, Eduardo, who are witnessing what's going on. There are people on the ground who know that hospitals are running out of fuel so that they can't run their generators, and there's incubators that have babies in them that need those incubators, and they're going to stop working, and these children are going to die. So this stuff is horrible.
Oh,
I wish there was a way to do it without war. I wish there was a way to do it without war. But Israel is convinced, and they use references to what the Americans did in Iraq against ISIS, even though the Americans, starting with the president, is the first to suggest that what they did was wrong. Firstly, because it wasn't true that Iraq had, you know, weapons of mass destruction. Firstly, and secondarily, they weren't the problem. It wasn't Iraq specifically, but so you got to be very careful that you try repeating history isn't a blank check. Just because you want to, something happened in the past doesn't mean you have a right to do it now. That's what we call progress. you
yeah.
don't, you don't.
The,
That worries me.
no, it is worrisome, and I'll tell you, I have friends in both sides of the border, and it's sad. I speak with both sides of the border every single day because I'm worried. Uh, you know, and I'll tell you, this is not going to be a short haul. This is going to be a very long haul battle, because what Hamas has built underneath Gaza is not destructible.
Well, they got to go in there. Tanks have gone in there, I
Yeah,
believe,
but
today,
they
and
got,
they're blowing up tunnels as we speak.
yeah, but they, how much they can blow, they don't know
I
where
don't
they
know.
are. I mean,
I don't know.
it's miles and miles and miles of tunneling that go out to the sea. So
I understand what you're saying, Eduardo, but they
you know,
also, the Americans, remember the Americans had a hard time bombing, what's his name? They killed him. Uh,
Osama bin Laden.
yeah, bin Laden. They had a hard time, in Afghanistan bombing them because they went into caves and stuff. They ended up inventing bombs that could bomb caves, that would get to caves. And I think Israel was motivated and knew for a long time that there were, tunnels. And I can't believe that they haven't figured out a way to bomb them or destroy tunnels in a way that we didn't know before. Do you know what I mean? Like in the
Yeah,
last, what, 5, 10 years, they knew about tunnels being built there. They knew for a long time that there were tunnels being built that went into Israel under the fence. In fact, they used those same tunnels to do what the Hamas, to do the damage they did to those innocent people in Israel. You know,
definitely. But the thing is, like I keep saying, I mean, it's a matter that you don't know where they are, because over the last, I would say, those same 10 years, we've had uh, political tension in Israel that has been deviated from what was important and what Israel was built on.
Well, they're
Yeah.
distracted. The As a people, they're distracted, and it's one thing to have the people distracted and the government. How can I put this? The problem is the distraction in Israel went all the way up to the prime minister. That's the problem. Like if your voters are distracted, that's one thing. But when the government from top to bottom has problems and it's divided within the government itself, down the middle or close to the middle, there's going to be a lot of there's going to be a lack of cooperation. That's a reality. You know that that's why people like Trump should never be given power. Never. And Netanyahu is another. He's too much like Trump. And these are people who, for they could be do good for their country, but it's the bad that we've got to pay attention to. Just because people do good for you doesn't mean you ignore the bad. And the bad is that he is somebody who wants to divide people. And Netanyahu tried the same deal, like you said, and they divided people. Congratulations.
And this is one of the things that
That was sarcasm, by the way.
one that's one of the things that we have to think here in Canada. We live in a
Absolutely.
uh, let's remember.
Hopefully when Trudeau's gone, that the next leader that shows up, whether he's a liberal, an NDP, or a conservative, hopefully it'll be somebody that figures out how to bring Canadians together and remind us of how important it is to be at least trying to get on the same page. We don't have to be on the same page. We just have to try to get on the same page in a sincere fashion. That's what has to happen in the US. That's what has to happen in Canada. And Trudeau, unfortunately, is, well, he's a divisive figure. I'm not necessarily saying it's his fault, but the fact
It's
is he's a divisive
it
figure.
let, we have to be honest. I mean, I have been a liberal for years, and I don't agree with whatever Mr. Trudeau has done in a lot of sense. Why? Because I don't think he was prepared for the role that he assumed from day one. Uh,
I just don't think he handled the hatred right. And you know, um, he made some mistakes during the pandemic, Eduardo.
he made a huge mistake during the pandemic. Huge.
Made a couple.
Yeah. But I mean, it's the thing is that we cannot allow either. There were some policies that were bad, uh, and
Sure.
100% bad, but there were some policies that were good, and I have to give that to the people that were on his team that made the right decisions, because it wasn't made by him. The decisions were made by him. But the thing is that right now we are going into an election period, and we have to look at the reality of things. We have to not look at the left, not look at the right. Let's look at what Canada needs to get ahead of the game and come united as a nation. Because if we keep going in this direction, that whatever the left says 4 years, then we go revert to the right. That's not the correct answer either. Uh,
Yeah, I don't have any answers. The only thing I know is that if politicians if politicians use hate and vitriol to win an election, we're in trouble. It's time to, like you said to the in the beginning, what you talked about Trudeau. You said about issues. If they made decisions, policies, we have to be a people that believes that we can discuss policies, not personal likes or dislikes, not who we are and who they are. It's time for Canadians to figure out who we are. And this kind of BS that we've seen around the world and in places, it needs to be shown the door here in Canada. I hear uh, people on the right in Canada and hear legitimate beefs from them, legitimate statements, legitimate things that we should look into. And well, for example, I'll give you an example. Sometimes we can't be stuck in policy, right? We can't stick to something. I Since the pandemic and since the Ukraine was attacked by Russia, I've drawn a conclusion that we need to make Russia as weak as possible. We need to weaken Russia because of their bombing of hospitals, schools, theaters. Whether it's on purpose or by accident, to me, Eduardo, does not matter. They're volleying those bombs into a country. So they don't get to say, oops, we made a mistake. Oh my goodness. Right? So I drew the conclusion that the oil industry in Canada, for now, needs to run at full power, including our gas as well, to try and offer the Europeans the fuel that they need that's usable today. You know, and to me, I believe in the environment, and I'll have a lot of friends of mine who are environmentalists who will say, Frank, what the hell are you saying? What's the matter with you? And I will say this: I look at two issues. I look at a guy who's using a leader of a country who's using his strength in oil in that industry to wreak havoc on a neighbor and kill children, like we're talking about with Israel. So, do we let that happen, or we go, you know what, we got to put him out of business, or at least take a bite out of his income? And I know my friends that believe in the environment who are right about concerns, but I have to worry about today's concern. Not that oil isn't a today concern, but a concern that we have people's lives are hanging in the balance, and we can't let guys like like Putin win any arguments. Never mind a big one, any arguments. This guy has to be shut down. We have to protect ourselves against people like that.
No, you are definitely correct. I mean, it's the and it's an issue with the alliance of nations that haven't done what needs to be done uh, to help Ukraine. Feeding weapons into a country doesn't solve the situation. Helping them rebuild and counteract what the other guys are doing, it's a much better solution.
That time's going to come. That time has to come. There's going to be the time. They've even talked already about about making Russia pay for the repairs. The cost of not only healing people, but bringing their country back up again after being destroyed the way it's been destroyed.
Look, I was looking today at the at some of the committees within the UN because and it made me laugh.
The UN's not going to work
No, no, no,
because
but think about it. These are the people that are taking decisions on what how the free world makes decisions when it comes to Israel, when it comes to any nation in the world. When you have Syria as the head of the Human Rights Commission in the UN, we have to have we have a big problem. I mean, after what they did with their own people.
Eduardo, that's the issue. The
But
issue is
how can
with
you
the
have
UN. It's hyper political, and it's
yeah, but
you
how can
know
you have a country that violated human rights of their own people being the leader of the presidency of the world the world leaders? I
it
mean,
is what it is.
it, does that make sense to you?
No, of course not. But Eduardo, what we're talking about here is basically the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about the issue. We're talking about aligning ourselves. And the UN is one of the worst examples or best examples of aligning, not for the truth or what's right, but who's talking and who's doing. That's the UN. The UN does some good work, but they can't do good work when it comes to actual actual issues. They can't do much because China, Russia, the United States have vetoes, right? So if they don't like what you're doing, it doesn't matter whether it's right or not. If it doesn't work to their political desires, to their needs, they veto the whole thing. The Americans have done it. They're not innocent in this. The Russians are doing it. We're seeing it. And then you end up with countries like Syria being in charge of organizations that they have no business being in charge of. Absolutely. But that's the UN. The UN is not a democracy. It's a hybrid of, you know um, I don't know, international rule for the moment. They don't create, they don't follow international rules of 100 years. If the Americans are doing something wrong, boom, that doesn't, no, we don't talk about that. If the Russians are doing something, no, we don't talk about that. The Chinese are doing something wrong, no, we don't talk about that. That's the UN. The UN is not a place where major issues can be solved, because usually when there's a major issue, a major country is involved, right? And nobody's going to spank China, Russia, or the US. And I'm not comparing the three countries. I'm not comparing them. I'm just saying they have all sat in that seat where they defended their actions that were indefensible. And that's why you got Biden saying what we did in Iraq was wrong. He's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to say the right thing. He's trying to pacify and or allow Israeli people to feel like America has their back, and he's trying really hard, like almost like the UN should do, right? And say, but hey, don't forget those innocent people. Some might say, well, he's just saying that. Well, the fact that he's saying it carries some weight, in my opinion. Whether he follows through on it, we can argue about that. But the fact that he says it has some weight. It might not be enough weight, but it's weight.
So to change the topic a little bit,
Go ahead. You want to
I'm
talk about
just
the Argos? Oh, okay.
oh. No, I was actually I don't know if you got to a chance to see the highlights of the game between the New York Giants
And
and
the Jets?
and the Jets.
No, I didn't see the highlights, but I'll tell you my two bits in this. A lot of people were looking forward to that game, and it was probably the first time in a very long time that people felt the Jets were the favorites.
It, I watched the game and
Mm-hmm.
I was flat. I felt flat because my God, how do you take a game? You are winning the game 10-7. Sorry, yeah, 10-7. On until the last minute of the game. And in 22 seconds, the game gets destroyed, gets tied, and 5 minutes later, you lost the game by 3 points on a field goal. It just was disastrous for the Giants. I couldn't believe it. And that and that's I mean, our good friend Scott Churchson is a Giants fan forever, and I think he probably was crying all the way.
Well, if you're a Giants fan and your team loses to the Jets based on recent history, it's shameful. But from now on, if the Giants can beat the Jets, it's going to be a really good thing.
Oh,
And Eduardo, one thing I will say about your statement, I may not be able to speak because I saw the game, but I can say this: good teams win somehow. Bad teams, they lose somehow. And I think the Giants are on that somehow lose side of the equation. And you defined it and expressed it.
was just ridiculous. But then my Dallas Cowboys destroyed
The
Really?
Cowboys look like they're for real, and people are talking, what's amazing is people are talking big about, the Cowboys. A lot of people are way behind them saying, this is the team, this is the team. And usually every year they fall flat on their faces. And I think sometimes some people might think back in the day, they were falling flat on their faces because maybe they were believing what people were saying and they weren't able to, to execute victories. But this is a different Dallas team. I think it's a Dallas team that has basically um, had the
A
point
witness.
driven home that there have been times when we couldn't help ourselves but lose, and when we get the chance to win, we're going to do it. And I think that's the attitude they have right now, is that they know what recent history is like for them, and they're literally motivated by those thoughts to be a better team this year, and they've proven to be a better team this year.
Oh, it's amazing. No, like if you look, if you, I've never seen a Dallas team. I've been a Dallas fan forever, and I've never seen a Dallas team that is actually working as a team. For in the last decade, never has that. They have been all individuals playing for each other, for themselves. This team is actually working for themselves, and it's working together, and it's great.
Absolutely.
But let's go to the CFL because you brought a good point. What's going to happen? I want to know.
The Argos have a big target on their backs. They're going to go through the next game, whoever they play, whether it be Montreal or Hamilton, are two teams that are and will be and will play like bitter rivals. And it doesn't matter which team. I think Montreal is the better team by a bit, only because of the way they've played this year, and their record reflects how good they are. The Ticats are a team in waiting. They're waiting to be a contender. They're right on the. They really are on the edge of becoming a really good contender. And those two teams, they can beat Toronto in the Eastern Final. Those two teams, but they will have to play in a way that they haven't played yet this year. And the Argos will have to, on their behalf, make mistakes and not recover. This Argo team is a team that I said earlier about, there are teams that just know how to lose, and then there are teams that know how to win. They've been a team that knows how to win, and they've done it late in games. They've done it early in games. They've done it all over the place. Hamilton and Montreal. Montreal's further down that road of being a great team than Hamilton. That's not to suggest that Hamilton can't beat Montreal or be a great team.
Do you think? Do you think that there is a chance somewhere in which? But they are playing. They are playing in Toronto. The
Yeah,
Eastern Final.
on the 11th, November 11th, Remembrance Day.
Yeah, it's interesting because if it's Hamilton, it's going to be there is going to be a lot of fans coming in.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There haven't been any this year. This year they were staying away from BMO. Their confidence is probably higher than it's been for that fan base, but we'll see how many of them show up. They have been disappointed too many times, Eduardo. That's a fan base that has had a lot of disappointment, and I guess the way I'll explain it is you have so much emotion that you can expend, and then you need to recharge. They're in recharge mode because they've expended a lot of emotion, and all they've gotten back is disappointment. They lost every game against the Argos this year.
It's
So, you
it's
know,
it's amazing. I'm looking forward to seeing that final, and I'm looking forward whoever if Toronto wins that final, going to either old Ivory Stadium or Tim Hortons Field
Tim
now.
Hortons Field. I, I I tell you, from this angle, I don't remember. I don't remember a confusing end of season in the Canadian Football League like we have today. With the way Hamilton at the end of the season started improving, they did it last year to make the playoffs, but they weren't doing it enough to win. And then you've got Calgary. Calgary to me is you talk about what team, if the Argos pull through, if they win their Eastern final, is it possible they could beat Calgary in the Grey Cup? And this is 2012 with reverse roles. Toronto came into the 2012, the 100th anniversary, as a lame a lame team that struggled to make the playoffs. Did make the playoffs at a 9-9 record, not a real great record, and they're playing Calgary, one of the best teams of the decade, right? And they beat them. This is the irony. Now we've seen in the this is the first time an Eastern Division, a Western Division team could make it to the final with a poor record in a long time. I don't remember the last time. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. I don't know. Do you want to be BC to play Calgary again? I know Calgary, they had something to lose, and they played with a lot of pride. But BC didn't have all their players. But is it a reality? Do you think that Calgary could repeat what they did in BC again?
I look, it's everything is possible.
Absolutely, it is.
I just want to end our show congratulating in the performance that Canada has put so far at the Pan American Games, because it's something out of this world. They already beat the record that they established in Toronto 2015. So and we are only in day 6 of the Panams. They are at 85 medals, ladies and gentlemen. That's an accomplishment for any Canadian Olympic or Pan American team.
It's awesome.
Uh, they have they are almost there, matching the US in golds. If that tells you anything, they are almost there in matching and the US in gold. So, congratulations to our Canadian team, Team Canada Go. And with that, Frank, I will let you close the wonderful hour that we had of conversation in a happy note.
God bless Canada. Thank you, Eduardo. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live, airing Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at some point. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid Frank Live, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget Candid Frank 1030 on YouTube. Subscribe. See you soon, folks.